Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Sworn Random, and today I'm bringing to you another Hood Outlaws and Legends guide, except this time I'm going to be giving you 11 tips to help you get the most out of your ranger. So let's get into it. Tip number 1. Just because you have arrows doesn't mean you need to use them. So in case you don't know, assassinating these AI enemies is actually going to give you more XP and more ability on your meter than you get from shooting an arrow at them. So off of the rip, I've seen so many of these rangers just grabbing their bow and just shooting all these enemies. The one standing by the portcullis, the two that are usually walking towards you when you open the match. Everybody kind of just pulls out their bow and shoots all these enemies. Well, no, actually, you should be in the early game, like right when the game starts, going around and assassinating as many enemies as you can in order to get your ability meter charged, your ultimate ability, the explosive arrow. In order to get that just a little bit faster, you should be going around and assassinating all these enemies. You'll usually get your ability in about 4 or 5 assassinations and just a little bit more game time, which doesn't take long at all. You can usually get that right off the start, especially if your teammates allow you to get the assassinations, which they should be, because Robin's ult is arguably the best to have off the rip. Okay, so tip number 2. This is a very, very simple one, very easy one. There is almost no drop on his bow, but you have to lead shots significantly if players are moving. This means that on these long-range sight lines, you can aim just at or even the tiniest bit above some of these enemies' heads and you will connect. But just because you don't have to aim significantly above them doesn't mean you don't have to lead them. If players are running across the map and they're kind of in an open area and you want to take this, like snipe at them, you actually have to put the crosshairs a good distance in front of them. It's nothing crazy. It's not like the arrow does not move slow by any means, but you do have to give them probably like a good inch to 2 inch of advancement in order to hit some of these shots. Alright, so tip number 3 is a bit more of a gameplay decision rather than a tip, but it's one that I found very useful while I've been playing. So basically, your ultimate ability has 2 purposes. Either to take down the sheriff, or to prevent close quarters combat. And let's start with close quarters combat. So basically what I mean whenever I say that is whenever you're being rushed by a John or a Took. If these guys are pushing you as a Robin, if you've played him before, you know that this is absolutely terrifying. But my suggestion for you is if you're getting these assassinations like you should have your ult up fairly often. And you should mostly be using it to prevent John and Took from pushing you. What I mean is whenever they are sprinting at you, you will pull out your ult and shoot it at their feet. This is where I will recommend to you to use in your perk 3 slot either the elemental arrow or the mercurial arrow if you have it available. These 2 perks are significantly better than the forceful fighter perk in my opinion, and while elemental arrow is good in reducing that time to blow up, the instant explosion if used correctly can be absolutely devastating to any melee fighter who's trying to push you. And as for using it to take down the sheriff, you might get what I mean if I ask you if you've ever been at a point where your team was trying to extract the chest using the winch, and the sheriff is just standing there looming over you and you are completely unable to extract the chest. Like say you just got a squad, you killed 3 or 4 of the enemy team and the sheriff is just there being a huge party pooper and not letting you get this chest out. Well, that's where you should have an ult saved for that occasion. Especially if you know you're getting like later in the game, because his ult is one of the very, very few things that can take down the sheriff. And I've seen this scenario come up almost every game where you just finished a team fight, your John and your Took want to jump on the winch and start extracting, but the sheriff is right there. You don't have the time for the John to go grab a grenade and come back and blow him up. You don't have the time to put him down in any other way. Robin's flashes aren't going to do enough, so you need to have your arrow late game for that specific purpose. On to number 4. This is one I'm sure you've seen if you've watched any gameplay or if you've played Ranger yourself. If you've played against another Ranger, you definitely know it, and that is that Ranger has sniper glint whenever he's aiming down sights. So this tip is basically just me telling you don't aim unless you plan on shooting, right? Don't sit out there in the bush and see somebody running across the top of a castle and just look up and aim at them from your bush because now they know exactly where you are, And if you're fighting an enemy ranger who seems particularly good and you're noticing he might be getting the best of you in some of their fights, try to, hang back a little bit and just look for his sniper glint. Because the second you find it, you'll be able to get on a lot more even terms when it comes to these one-on-one fights against the enemy ranger. Tip number 5. If you're being sprinted at by one of these sword AI enemies, you can just hit them with a quick shot first, just one little arrow, like not charged at all, while they're sprinting at you. And it'll actually stun them and allow you to get off a medium charged shot, which you can aim just a little bit easier and put it in their head to kill them. I'm sure I'm not the only ranger who's alerted the AI enemies and they've just come sprinting at me and I just kind of panicked and tried to charge a full shot and missed it completely. So this is just a little quick tip to try to make sure that you avoid doing that in the future. The next 4 tips all have to do with the ranger's stun grenade, because it's actually a lot more powerful than you might think. So, tip number 6. Use his stun grenade to get enemies to un-aggro on you. And what I mean by this is if the enemies are about to be alerted, like the yellow exclamation point, or they are alerted, like the red exclamation point, you can actually just pull out a stun grenade, throw it at their feet right quick, and they will actually just become blind, not see you. Your red outline will disappear. You can sneak off into some bushes and get away from them. Tip number 7. The ranger's stun grenade is how he deals with knights or the armored enemies, the ones who, are guarding the vault door and are around the winches. As a ranger, you can't actually hurt these enemies with your arrows, and trying to melee them is a death wish. So use his stun to stun them and then sneak behind them and assassinate them. Tip number 8. You can use his stun grenade to easily steal the key from the sheriff. So, early game, once you find the sheriff, he's often completely on his own. You can kind of just walk up to him or walk behind him and steal the key, but you can actually do it much easier with Ranger. You can walk right up to his face, chunk a stun grenade directly at his head, hit him with it, and then grab the key. You don't have to throw it at his head, just, kind of throw the stun grenade anywhere near him. He'll be blind, and then go grab the key and get away. This works especially well if you're using the volatile gourd perk, which lets you have 2 stuns and the effect lasts longer. It just makes it really simple. You don't have to worry about him seeing you or alerting or grabbing you and killing you whenever you're trying to sneak up behind him by like an awkward turning around animation or something like that, which does happen in this game a lot. So just hit him with a stun grenade, grab the key, and you're good. So now that I've taught you how to use a stun grenade, let me tell you what to do if it goes poorly. So, in case you don't know, if you use your stun grenade wrong, you can actually stun yourself. And this isn't actually as detrimental as you might believe. You can just look at the minimap to see where you're going. So this is tip number 9. If you stun yourself, use the minimap. It's perfect. You can just run around. You might even know where the bushes are if you're in an area that you play a lot. So anytime you're stunned, you can't see anything. Even if you get stunned by an enemy ranger, just use the minimap. It'll tell you exactly where you're going. And look for indicators. They sometimes pop up while you're still stunned. So those are there too. Okay, tip number 10. So this is going to tie back a little bit into tip number 3, which was how to use your ultimate. But tip number 10 is utilize elevation to stay out of melee combat. And the ways you can really do this are there's lots of ladders around the map. You can kind of get up on these little perches and in these places. And as long as you're up there, melee enemies will have to climb to you to get to you, or at least take some stairs, right? And you'll be able to see them coming. And that's where holding on to your ult for this purpose is so good. If you're using elevation, you'll have time to either think of a getaway plan or counter them as they try to get to you. Also, elevation is just really good for, looking around the map and getting info on where the enemy team might be, pinging them, pinging enemies, etc., etc. Just as Ranger, make sure you're staying high on the map in all these elevated locations. So tip number 11, one I kind of threw in here at the end. If you want to play Ranger, you got to know the spots. Please go give my Ranger sniping spots video a watch. There's most likely a spot or 2 in there that you haven't seen used or haven't used yourself before. So give it a watch. It's really informative. There's a lot of spots that almost look like they shouldn't work, like leaning over a bridge to see a winch, or even standing at the other side of a bridge, like basically across the map. Like there's some good spots in there. Just go give it a watch. I definitely think it could help improve your gameplay. and that will conclude my tips and tricks video for Ranger. If you liked any of these tips, please leave a like and subscribe for more. If you have any tips of your own that you think should have been on this list, please leave them down in the comment section below, and let's all get better at this game together. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.